Hi, I'm Steve Wood from ManyWho, and I'm just going to show you a quick demo of our developer tooling, which is something that we haven't shown yet in a video. So this is the representation of an application we've built to manage policyholders. There's a couple of videos about this, so I won't show it, but basically you can see there's a screen here that says, what do you want to do? Add policyholders, shows you a page layout, saves them back to the system, and then back to the main. What I thought I'd do is just give you a quick look at what this looks like from a developer perspective. So I'm going to go to our dev tools and log in to my account. Okay, now that I'm logged in as a developer, you can see this is a little REST tool that we built to help manage our REST APIs. You can use curl if you want to. This is just a tool to help. If you just want to get a sense of the APIs. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at what it looks like to run a flow. So first thing I'll do is I'll go to the run API, and all of the APIs I'm showing are documented in our developer documentation. So definitely have a look at that. So first thing I do is grab a list of all the flows we can run, and that's what happens if you do a GET request on the flow. So I'll run that command. And what you'll see is we've got quite a few flows available to us. What I'm going to do here is actually run this claim flow. So what you'll see here is we've got this ID, which is a composite ID of ID and version ID for the claim flow. So what I'm going to do is to run that is I have to do a couple of things. First thing I need to do is I need to initialize the flow. And initializing, it gets the flow basically set up to run. So to initialize it, I use the run API here, and I'm going to post, and I can grab the JSON just by clicking this, and it gives me the template JSON that I need. You'll see it's already picked up the first flow in the list, but it hasn't picked up the version. You need to provide the version ID also to be able to run a flow through the API. So I'll just paste in that version ID. We can also pass in input values as part of the execution of the flow. In this case, those are values that we passed into the running flow. So we could pass in the color, name, or whatever. We might pass in some values that are useful for the flow, such as the account ID that we want to load, etc. We can also create annotations, and annotations are things that basically a developer wants to annotate to the flow. It's not stuff that will be passed into the flow. It's just information that will hold statefully for you as the flow executes over time. And if the flow takes weeks or months to execute, the annotations can be quite helpful because they can hold additional information, maybe some token information that you need that you don't want to have to kind of pass into the flow because it just adds additional complexity. It's easier just to annotate it, and then you can add them. And the annotations are open. You can create whatever annotations you like. So I'm going to create the inputs as null. We haven't got any inputs. Now I'll run this command and see what comes back. So the first thing you'll see that comes back is actually giving us a status of 401. You might say from a full REST perspective, we should actually throw a 401 fault. We haven't because we wanted to actually give you back additional information. And the additional information we're giving you is actually that you need the user to log in, and they need to log in to the ManyWho directory, and they're going to log in so under this directory ID, and this is the login URL that you need to use to actually provide the login. Again, all this is in the documentation. So we can actually simulate this. We've actually built it into the tool. We're actually just sign in manually. So now I'm going to log in to that directory, which is a Salesforce directory, and I'm going to log in using my Salesforce credentials. This will set up a session value for us for the header that will pass the authentication token and the header back to the user. Again, all in the docs. So if I now run this command again, what you'll see is it actually gives me a 200, which is to say that the login is successful, we have initialized a flow, and we're ready to go. So the step of actually going through and executing a flow is we basically bounce off of the state resource, which is a kind of a dance back and forth on state. So I'm just going to go to the state resource. And in this case, I just have to pass in the state ID. It's a little bit duplicate, but you'll see how it works in a second. So we give it the state ID, we're going to post. I'll grab the JSON that we're now going to use. Now it's been initialized the sequence. So I'm going to grab the full state ID. As you see, it's a little duplicated. And I'm going to pass in the state token, which tells the engine how up-to-date our data is. So it knows if we've got any issues on sequencing. And then with the current map element ID, which just tells us where you think you are in the flow. The engine will always maintain the transactional integrity of the flow. You can't skip elements by changing the current map element ID. And then basically there's this selected outcome, and we haven't actually selected an outcome, so we'll just remove that from the API. So the call is basically saying, I want to execute a forward request from this start map element, no annotations, we won't provide the geolocation information, and we haven't selected an outcome. So if we now run that command, what you'll see we get back is the first step in our flow. So you'll see the structure of the response we get back. And I'll just very quickly show you what this looks like. So we have the page containers, which is the scaffolding for the layout. You'll see that it's a vertical flow layout container. It's ordered the first one. We also have some components. In fact, we only have one. The component is bound to that above container. It's a presentation component, which means it doesn't have any other sort of attributes of measure in terms of the scaffolding. It's called step content. And then separately from the component and container scaffolding, we then have the metadata and the data that applies to those components. So we've got the data here, which is basically the content of that component, which is what do you want to do. And then we've got also any additional metadata for the containers. The reason why we've separated this is because when you run the flow, we give you all the scaffolding and then we give you all the metadata and data. But if any of the fields has an event, as indicated here, then you pass back only the data of the components, and we won't pass you back all the scaffolding again. We'll just pass you back the data and the metadata, so you know how to update the scaffolding appropriately. Do you need to hide a tab, hide a section, hide a field, set something as required, set something as disabled, etc. So we did that logical separation of kind of metadata and data from scaffolding. So this is the the step. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the outcome for add policy holders, and that will navigate us down. So right now we're looking at this screen, and you'll see the content, the content here. What do we want to do? And then we're going to select the outcome, which is the add policy holders outcome, which will navigate us to this full page layout. So I'm going to take that ID, and I'm sorry, I'll just paste this here. And I'm going to take that ID and tell the system that that is the outcome that we want to select. I also need to update a little bit of information. I need to update my token because that's no longer the same. The state will always remain the same. That state is permanent for the this session of the flow. And then our current map element has also changed because we're now on the step. So just quickly change those. So you get a sense of this dance. You're always changing the state token, the current map element ID, and then setting what the selected outcome is that you want to run. So I'll now run this command again. And what you'll see is we now get a much more complex page. In this case, you can see we've got the container hierarchy. So this is all of the scaffolding. If any of you have done development in Bootstrap, Twitter Bootstrap, think about it as our JSON as being one layer below. Rather than saying it's divs and you're laying out divs and containers like divs, we're actually just giving you that equivalent, but as JSON objects, which gives you the option to decide, are you going to render those as divs in an HTML5 application, or are you going to render that as native components in a native application? And this is actually what the platform does. Our platform doesn't actually have any HTML on it at all. It is entirely a surface of REST APIs that describe the UI back to the service. So even when you're running and building flows on our system, we're actually using the same dance of JSON requests from our tooling to the backend system. So hopefully that gives you a little sense of it. I'll just show you what this layout looks like in UI form, so you get a sense of what it looks like to the way we built it. So I'll open that now. So this is the layout as it appears, as it's built out in the flow. It doesn't appear like this to the end user, but this is what it, how it's laid out in the point and click tooling. Anyway, I hope that gives you a little sense of just what we've done with the developer training and how the platform actually works. Because everything we've done, even this dialogue you're looking at right now, is a flow and uses that same API to deliver the build experience that you have when you're building out flows on Manyhoo. So we are a customer of our own API, and we're making that available to you also. Thank you.